Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate you all coming. I know you're all busy. Some of you have spent already a good amount of time with me, and it's been really nice to get to know you, to learn more about the campus. So I appreciate your interest and attention. Had a very nice time here so far, so thanks. I'm Robert Matz. My current position is Senior Associate Dean in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at George Mason University, Fairfax. And my topic for today is my vision for the Mason Korea campus. Before I start with that vision, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. Since you want to know where I come from, how I think. So my field of expertise is English literature, and particularly British Renaissance literature. I am the author of 2 books and the editor of a third, Defending Literature in Early Modern England, The World of Shakespeare's Sonnets, and an edition of 2 early modern marriage sermons. And offline, I'd love to talk to you about any of those. Marriage was really interesting at the time. That work might seem, it's in England, it's in the 16th to the 17th century. It might seem somewhat far afield from a global branch campus, but in many ways there's a continuity. As a humanist, I am really interested in different cultures, the way both individuals and societies make meaning in cultural difference and cultural interaction. And so there's a continuity there. I love learning about languages and about other people. Also, as a humanist, I'm really interested in communication, representation, audience, understanding the other. And I have found in my leadership positions in academia that humanist training has been very important. That being able to articulate values, being able to understand what other people's interests are, is really important. And so I've really had a kind of smoother transition between this research and academic leadership than one might think first. A little bit. And in particular, I would point to the first book I wrote, Defending Literature in Early Modern England, which was about representing intellectual and cultural ambitions. Though early modern England produced very famous poets, most famously Shakespeare, then as now, people treated writing poetry with a great deal of skepticism. What's the purpose of this? And so my book was about how those poets made the claim for the value of what they do. And I've been making those kinds of claims of value ever since as in my academic leadership roles. And that's something that I know that Mason Korea needs too. It needs someone who knows how to think about how you represent intellectual and cultural ambitions. Particularly in terms of administrative experience, I joined George Mason in 1993, so I have a long familiarity with both its programs and its people, and I admire the one a great deal. I have a great deal of affection for the other. I really like George Mason, and I would like to bring that enthusiasm here and make connections help make connections between the 2 campuses. I was Director of Undergraduate Studies in English for about 6 years. I don't know why this mic keeps going in and out. I was director of undergraduate studies in English for about 6 years. Then I was chair of the English department. Then I spent about 5 years in the college dean's office, mostly a senior associate dean, but for about 8 months I was interim dean, as we had a transition between 2 deans. So I've been in academic administration for roughly 15 years, and I've done it all, or not all, but a lot of it. Advising, development of curriculum, enrollment management, marketing and recruitment, budget. The department budget was about $10 million, college budget was about $70 million. Strategic planning, supervision. I currently supervise about 6 people, including our associate dean for undergraduate academic affairs and our IT director. Strategic planning, both participating in it and helping to lead it, and the other side of strategic planning, crisis management, which I have also done on occasion. So I have that range of experience. But the other thing I would say, and I was mentioning this this morning, this goes back to my scholarship and thinking about how people represent intellectual projects. Even though the College of Humanities and Social Sciences and the English department are very big units, college and departmental units, they don't, everyone thinks it's about their own place, but they don't often get the love that they deserve. And we, especially under old budget conditions, we had to be incredibly scrappy in the English department and in the college to get resources, to get attention. So that's kind of where I come from. And it sounds like that's something that is important for Mason Korea too. So I would bring that as well. So let me transition and talk about my vision for Mason Korea. And I start first with values. Right? The values have to underline your mission. And so for me, that's commerce and culture are global, and education should be too. And that idea is reflected in Mason's strategic plan. One of the 12 goals of that plan is global engagement. And Mason Korea should be playing a significant part in that global engagement. We are internationalizing students and faculty. We are enhancing Mason's global reputation. And we are providing a base for international scholarly collaboration in Asia. So that's what we bring to global engagement. For South Korea, there are new educational opportunities. We're providing expanded global opportunities to South Korean students, letting them have an English education, an English language education, also a US style education, and yet remain for most of the time in the home company, getting what I talked about with some students was the idea that they really like the hybridity of Mason Korea, that they can have sort of the best of both worlds. So my vision for Mason Korea is that George Mason will continue to expand its role as a visible and valued part of George Mason University's efforts to become a global university that both contributes to and benefits from the growth of cross-cultural teaching, learning, and scholarship. In doing so, it will likewise serve the aims of the South Korean government and the Incheon Global Campus. And for me, the really key point here is visible and valued. How do we explain that value? How do we make Mason Korea visible? So what would success look like? It would look like this always working rather than intermittently. If you guys can hear me in the back, I don't really care. But what do I need to do? put on my tie. Yeah, maybe every time I do this, it works. Okay. All right, I will just talk to you all like this. Okay. 3-year markers of success. Continued growth of enrollments and new faculty, fueled in particular by increased student satisfaction. Because it's that student satisfaction that's at the center of what we do. We're here for the students, ultimately. Stronger connection between Mason US and Mason Korea, including the smoother transfer, more frequent exchanges of information, news, events, students, and faculty, and the development of new teaching and research collaborations between Mason US and Mason Korea. So how do we get there? I have 2 underlying strategies for success, what I think we need to do, and then I'll outline what I think are some priority goals. But I think there's an underlying philosophy here too, and these are these 2 underlying strategies for success. And the first is about communication. One of the things we know about challenges of international branch campuses is that they can be out of sight, out of mind in relationship to the home campus. And that's not a good relationship. So we need to avoid that out of sight, out of mind. One way we do that is to inventory communication breakdowns, try to understand, let me say I have subdivided between internal communication and external communication. So on the internal side, where are the communication breakdowns? And what I selected for this position, one of the things I would certainly want to do before I came over here was spend my time at Mason Fairfax talking to your counterparts in the, and saying like, okay, what works in terms of your communication, what's not working. So you want to inventory communication breakdowns. We want to think about, there are synchronous kinds of remote communication are really valuable, but they also have challenges with the time difference. So what are the asynchronous modes of communication we need? Maybe there's something more robust than ad hoc emails. There's some calendaring, project planning that needs to happen. Or maybe it's not so much the technology. We were talking about this earlier, but just the third thing is developing and relying on relationships between the staff of the 2 campuses. So really putting staff together, letting them get to know one another in a way that they can be proactive and that one needs to call the other, that can happen. There's also external communication. We want to, again, make Mason Korea more visible to Mason Fairfax, and Mason Fairfax more visible to Mason Korea as well. So we want to increase, for example, the number of stories about Mason Korea in the US, for example, in the George, and vice versa. We want to facilitate the interaction of students and faculty from the 2 campuses in formal and informal exchanges. So what I mean by that is, for example, when faculty from US visit Mason Korea, when they come back, we make ways for those faculty to talk to other faculty in the US about what they've seen here. I've been here less than 2 days, and I'm already ready to go back to the US and say, like, why are you still in the US? You know, come on over. There's really great opportunities here. Likewise, when our students come for their year in Fairfax, how do we introduce them as and identify them as Mason Korea students, right? But also, you know, I think there were maybe some experimentation around this already, but have students here write a column for the Fourth Estate, the Mason media back home, like Life in Mason Korea. When our Fairfax students come over, our Mason Korea students, do some videos, like A Night in Seoul, right? I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities to, oh, maybe not. Yeah. A kind of night in Seoul. All kinds of possibilities around that. So increasing the visibility that way. And then when we try to get both faculty and students, when we make the case for Mason-Korea to faculty and students, and particularly to faculty on the Fairfax campus, that can't happen when they've been at Mason Fairfax for 8 years, and they've now started a family, and there are lots of logistical complications. You want to make the idea of coming over here something that they learn when they're being recruited, either as students or faculty to George Mason US, right? This is added value. And especially for faculty, then you can plan ahead and think, all right, I know the years during which I can do this. So my motto here is, and you can borrow this if you want, let people percolate. The second underlying strategy for success is to apply Mason's secret sauce. And so when Angel Cabrera or David Wu talk about the amazing success that George Mason and Fairfax has had over the last 50 years, both in terms of student numbers and in terms of reputation, they often refer to Mason's secret sauce. But neither of them tells you what that is. I'm going to tell you what that is, or at least what I think it is. The first is that George Mason's culture is really collegial and welcoming. And the first job is to make sure that we have this collegial, respectful, friendly, open, developmental relationship for faculty and staff. Because I find that when you have that with faculty and staff, there are all sorts of ways that then that gets transferred to the student experience as well. And we know from market research at George Mason Fairfax that one of the key words that students associate with Fairfax and like about it is that it's a very welcoming place. So we want to have that same kind of experience here. The second is, I think we've always been at George Mason really optimistic, and we see assets and opportunities, not challenges to manage. And that's really, I think, important. My volume just went up. I'll talk, right? What we want to guide us is always the question, what can Mason Korea allow Mason Fairfax to do that it would not otherwise be able to? And that's thinking in terms of assets and opportunities at the institutional level. At the individual level, we want to think developmentally and trust in people's abilities. You hire great people, and then you release them, support them to do great things. Okay, so specific goals for achieving this vision. And I've put some general goals here, but I haven't put subpoints. One, because I know nobody likes a gazillion subpoints in their PowerPoint, but also because I don't want to come to you with a 5-year plan, like a 5-point plan. We're going to do this under these 5 points and this under these 5 points. Because one of the things I've said to people a couple of times today, my first job would be to listen to people and learn what I don't know. And that may change ideas, where I put emphases, etc. So what I'm trying to give you here is a sense of what I might want to start doing, but with the notion that it's not written down. So we need to increase retention for improved educational experiences and for financial stability. And here I would think about, I'm sure that I know that we're already doing a better job. Retention is going up every year, so that's great. And we certainly want to look at people who are at risk of not remaining through academic markers, through behavioral markers, but we also know that it's kind of the structural risks that are probably the biggest retention issue for us. That is, what kinds of institutional barriers get set up? So looking at how to ease the financial difference between transition from Mason Korea to Mason Fairfax, looking at those missing courses, those courses students want but can't get here. How do we figure out what are the courses that are most often missed, and then how do we provide them? And that in turn might mean thinking more creatively about engaging Mason faculty from the US in terms of short stays, hybrid courses, or finding other creative solutions to offer those courses, right? So that students don't get frustrated and say, I can't get these courses, I'm not going to continue. I also think, and this is something that I heard from the students that I talked to today, is one of this, there are difficulties about being small, but there's also a great opportunity to really talk to students, find out where they are, find out what the problems are, and so we can really leverage our small size to create this kind of small liberal arts college experience. And students already were telling me today that they appreciate this. I certainly, were I in this position, would make it a point to have meals with the students, invite students to come talk to me over dinner, and of course, I'd love to do that with faculty and staff as well, to have that kind of tight community. Increase enrollment for improved educational experiences and financial stability. And I've talked to the marketing team. It's clear that there's already some really strong strategies about finding feeder schools, about increasing the brand. So that's great. I think also, and we talked about this a little more, we're starting to get some student stories of student achievement. I'd love to get those stories more front and center, because I think that's really what students want to know, both student experience and student achievement, getting the student voices. I think finally, just along these lines, and this is something else I was saying this morning, that ultimately retention and enrollment strategies are very related, because all the good things you do to have students want to stay at Mason Korea are the good things that are going to want to make students come to Mason Korea. All the marketing in the world doesn't matter, and all the connections we create doesn't matter. We have to get the students in, but then we have to deliver on the value that we promise. So we have to have an educational system that's diverse, supportive, intellectually engaging, provides opportunities for experiential learning. All the things we talk about, we got to do. Ensure the alignment of educational experiences to fulfill the expectation of the Korean government and of our current and future students. And so here, partly that's a matter of, first of all, making sure that our advising is on the same page. It's also looking for those missing courses that are keeping students from having a similar experience and figuring out what we do about those. And then it's also about thinking ways that, I'll talk a little bit about having Mason Fairfax faculty come here, but I think also to the extent we can, facilitating, I know there's a lot of interest in facilitating travel from Mason Korea to Mason Fairfax. And I think there's real value in that, because that is about coordinating cultures and curriculum and knowing that person you can call, learning about what's happening in your department. I would love to be able to explore how we can get that back and forth in order to align the educational experiences because again, that's what our students are expecting from us. Facilitate the transfer of students and faculty between the two campuses in order to improve the educational experiences. I don't know why I'm looking at the back screen rather than you guys. And fulfill Mason's goal of global education and engagement. So, you know, in terms of students, that means, one, again, telling people from the Fairfax students from the time of recruitment, oh, you know, you could go to, one of the reasons you should come to George Mason Fairfax is so that you could spend a year in Korea, or a semester, as you guys are already doing with the Global Gateway program, which is great. Also, I think there are a lot of untapped populations of students at Mason Fairfax who would be interested in coming, and I'll talk about a couple of those in a bit. On the faculty side, again, you got even more with faculty because their lives are more complicated. You need to start early. But we also really need to start thinking about alternative shorter stays for faculty. So could we do a hybrid course, for example, where a faculty member does 7 weeks online and then 7 weeks on the Mason Korea campus. And particularly in combination with the spring semester, where the part of that time would be during the summer break for the faculty member, making that person even more mobile. Or I know like SCAR and its Malta program does very short module courses. So we want to look at some ways of increasing the flow of Mason Fairfax faculty that is practical, because no matter how much we talk about it, some people just logistically, it's going to be hard for them to come for a year. So I would want to look at those kinds of possibilities as well. Identify low-hanging fruit for collaboration between the two campuses. So already you guys are doing that. The partnerships are with SCAR at home seem really fruitful, and also with SHAR, the intellectual experiences you've organized around both of those partnerships have been great. But I think there's still a lot of possibilities, particularly in my own college, where we deal with society and culture. We have a lot of expertise in Asian studies that isn't being tapped. But sort of most clear for me, I've been talking about this with some of you, is that George Mason's second most popular language after Spanish is Korean. And we just created a concentration in Korean for the foreign language program. So now when you have a BA, you have to take a concentration in a particular language. Korean will take its place with Arabic and Chinese and Spanish and French. It was a great proposal that I read as in my curriculum role in the college. Never mentioned Mason Korea. I mean, what is that even about, right? So there are just so many opportunities to talk about how students in that program could come over, how maybe Mason Korean students could create correspondences with those students in order to teach them about life in Korea and do assignments around that, even if those students aren't going to come over. There's lots of possibilities there. And similarly, some of our sociology students, I'm sure less you've been kind of getting them over, but you know, so I think there's a lot more we can do. And finally, explore the ways in which current Mason expertise can support Mason Korea in, for example, higher education, business, and modern languages. And here, this is a collaboration I haven't heard much about, but it seems interesting to me because it seems a kind of potential set of wins for a lot of people.
So you already have a lot of expertise here, as I'm certainly learning all day, but there's also particularly students who are interested in areas that relate to Mason Korea. So we just had a higher education student who wrote her PhD on international branch campuses. Maybe there are more higher ed students who would like to do research that involves some of the issues around internationalization that we are addressing. Likewise, business students who are working on large international firms might be interested in looking at like how Mason coordinates its campuses spread apart. Students in the modern language might help us with translation issues, just like if we want our website fully translated into Korean. I think only part of it is now. Maybe that could be something that we would ask our advanced Korean studies students to do. It's not that we don't have this expertise here, but it's a great opportunity for Mason Fairfax students. It increases our visibility, right? And if we get some additional labor out of it, it's kind of a win-win-win. So I'm always looking for those sort of institutional curricular collaborations as well. So now I'm at the medium and longer term to achieve this vision. I think we want to identify additional curricula relevant to collaboration with Mason Korea, such as urban planning, sustainability, and engineering, in order to create new cross-curricular partnerships. And by additional curricula, I do not mean starting new programs. That's a much bigger discussion. But what I mean is, how do we fit? It's very natural that our first students who are coming from Fairfax are students in the social sciences, the humanities, and business, because our location, that's what you first think about, right? The differences in cultures, the business opportunities, that kind of human dimension. But I think there are really interesting reasons why a student in a STEM field, or especially STEM fields that intersect with the social sciences and the humanities and business, would want to come here, particularly being in Songdo, which is this amazing experiment in urban planning. So we have urban studies programs. Maybe a student who does urban studies would love to come here for a semester and learn about Songdo and how it was planned. The sustainability too, since the city is supposed to be a model of a green city as well, or an engineering feat, right, an international engineering. So again, in the goal of trying to make Mason Korea more visible, talk about all the ways that students at George Mason US might be interested. And then that leads to the next idea, or the next goal, which is to build on these student curricular collaborations to generate research collaborations between the two campuses. And that is, in terms of the question of research at Mason Korea, I think it really should be organic to Mason Korea. That is, rather than kind of independently saying, we are going to have the full research agenda that just kind of mirrors George Mason. Instead, say, what are the areas of interest here? How do we first start with curricular, connections, environmental studies, but what you're already doing with SCAR and with SHAR, bring those students here, and either through that or through other development of relationship with faculty, then build the faculty connections, right? So very often, and it's true at Mason Fairfax too, you start working on a curriculum, or you start talking about a particular course that people could teach together, and research collaborations come out of that. So what are the relevant research collaborations that could be furthered both here and at Mason Fairfax? And finally, make Mason Korea a model international branch campus by moving the relationship from one of mirroring to mutual benefit. The question should be, what value can each campus bring to the other? And so one definition of success would be you go to Mason, Korea, and you get the same education, the same kind of education that you get in Mason in the US. And that is a good kind of success. But I think we should set our sights higher. And that is that the relationship is not just one of mirroring, but of mutual benefit. That is, Mason Korea is an asset to Mason Fairfax, just as Mason Fairfax is an asset to Mason Korea. So it's not just mirroring, it's new possibilities that are generated out of the interaction of the two campuses. So the end point is a virtuous circle guided by the values of George Mason, where Mason Fairfax supports Mason Korea, but Mason Korea is giving value back to Mason Fairfax. Mason Fairfax said, boy, Mason Korea is really doing stuff for us. We're going to support them more. That allows us to do more, and that's what I mean by a virtuous circle, a kind of a good feedback. So that would be my end point, and that's the difference, I think, between mirroring and mutual benefit. So thank you very much. Kumasunida. And I am happy to answer questions. Yes. Can you tell me your name again?
My name is Zhang Xijin, economics.
Okay.
Economics. Thank you for using PowerPoint. It's good. And I recognize two problems in this book. One is our best students, A students, are leaving us after 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We like to keep those guys, but they have many different reasons why they are leaving. They transfer to local university in Korea. And another problem is we don't have tenure system here.
Mm-hmm.
So the country basis employment is not attractive to new PhDs. You know that there are many quality PhDs in the US job market, but we cannot recruit them because of no tenure track here, and salary is probably half of the US salary. So do you have any rough idea how to handle these two problems?
Sure, thank you. So in terms of students, we want to make sure that, again, that we are providing them with the intellectual experiences that we promised. So we want to make sure that our courses are truly engaging, that we're looking for co-curricular activities for them, that we're talking about the kinds of value they'll get from studying in Fairfax and spending a year in the US, and that we're providing what a number of students referred to that I talked to today, that you get a kind of support and personal attention, not only because of small class sizes, but because of the small student body size in general. You get a kind of, one student said, the great thing is, I don't even have to reach out to my faculty reaches out to me. So we have to let students know that there is that value there. And I also realize that students are interested in what their future is going to be. So we really, I talked to a couple of students who are going on very successfully. They were just seniors, and they, one is working at our own research institute and then going to grad school. Another was working for the CDC. And we need to let new students know that our students are having success. So that would be my initial set of strategies. Right? In terms of tenure, I do think we need So at George Mason, looking particularly at our full-time non-tenure faculty, there are a number of proposals around making sure that there's professional development, that there's ranks and recognition of experience and abilities through those ranks. And I think we need to align ourselves with Fairfax in that respect. We also, one of the things I would want to do is look at some of the various, there are a lot of international branch campuses, and they all deal with this question of tenure. So I think we need to do a lot more comparison about what are some of the models that are working. But I agree with you that we need to find ways to make sure that Mason Korea is a place that new PhDs want to come to, because I think that's going to be part of our faculty. One of the ways we do this, and I think one of the ways that Mason Fairfax has been successful, we've never been a rich university, but we have been a really exciting university and a really respectful and supportive university. Now, I don't mean to say like, you can live on love, but I do mean that people think more than just about, that people have many reasons that they decide to work at a place. So we need to think about the kind of resources that we have, which are only partly monetary. Oh yeah, hi. Oh, why am I? Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, that's for you. Yes. Hi.
Hi. Okay. My name is Sang Yeogo. I'm in the economics department. I major in economics. My question is that there are many students who has been educated in the Korean education system since elementary school here in Mason. And for some of those students, it is quite a dramatic change coming to a U.S. university especially. And for those students, their engagement in class, their engagement in university activities are quite low.
Uh-huh.
So, in order to address that problem, I think the school needs to understand the students who have been educated in Korean education system. And I want to ask, do you know anything about Korean high school students' value system, or how they think about education, university education?
Yeah. Mutual mic problems. Okay. My understanding, and you can correct me. If I'm wrong. But my understanding is that it's more of an emphasis on an instructor with certain expectations, that there's less kind of group work and less freedom, less self-direction. But I don't know if that's fair or not, or if that's even true. Could you tell me?
Yeah, I think that Korean students are used to be directed by the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Right. So I think for me the question is also I always am a little afraid of making any kind of generalization. I mean, there are high schools. You just don't know from student to student and from educational experience to educational experience. But what I think the important thing is, first of all, to learn more from students, from other faculty and staff who have experience in the Korean system, and then think about ways to address that transition. So that would be where I would be focused once I learn more, is how do you address that transition. Do you guys have a peer mentoring program here?
There's academic advising.
You have professional academic advising, or student academic?
Professional.
Right, but in terms of that more informal cultural shift, could you also have peer advising? You do have it. You have mentoring, right? Are there some students?
Right, so academic advising, we also have a professional academic advising.
Yes.
We do have a student first program where peer mentoring is happening.
Right. Is that would seem to be one place where students who have been at George Mason, who have gotten accustomed to the culture, help people who are new to it. So that's a great experience. That's one of those kinds of collaboration where you use student expertise to help solve a problem. It's kind of a win on both sides because the peer mentor gets something out of it too. The other thing I want to say about this, though, is that I also I don't know about, I understand that there are important important differences between the Korean system and the US system and transition issues. Having said that, as the father of a student at college, actually a student, a child who has both a mother and a father who are professors, when he got to college, he had no idea what to do. I say that with respect. So in some ways, this transition to a universe, and to really, to do the kinds of thing you're talking about, to be self-directed, self-actualizing. No, we couldn't do it. So some of these issues are issues that we face it's something that students have to learn when they come to university. We have to be good at helping them learn how to do that because it's a great experience. He's doing better now, by the way, in case you were worried. First year was a little tough.
Hi, my name is Yerim. I'm sophomore student majoring in global affairs.
Great.
And first of all, thank
Hi,
you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And I have 3 questions for you. And the first question.
I better get water.
Right. Can I start? You said that making Mason Korea as a model of international branch campuses is one of the visions you have, right?
Yeah.
So to do so, I think GMUK should care not only academic things, but also about employment things.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any plans to make internships with other Korean corporations, or like not only United Nations, but also other programs for marketing students or management students or economic students?
I think that those. I think that will be a focus. It's another important priority is to develop those relationships and make the case for why students who have great English language skills, who have a great understanding of international culture, would be terrific interns. And then what I would really need to do, though, I don't have connections to Korea, but one of the things that I very much like about working in these kinds of positions is making connections, making relationships. So I would be looking all the time for people I know who do, and really saying, like, could you introduce me to so-and-so? But I totally understand that for lots of reasons, this is true. This is something that I'm working on in my role as Senior Associate Dean in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences,
is building connections between external partners and students. So I find it very important. Yeah.
Thank you. And my second question is, I want to know why.
You guys hear me in the back now? Okay, great.
I want to know why faculty from Fairfax campus didn't allow Korean campus to use George Mason University logo, which is used in main campus, in making Letterman jacket. And also, could you fix the problem? I mean, it seems really trivial and small problem for, but for students, it's about identity, right?
Sure.
So, yeah.
So, which logo could you use?
We made it.
What's your question?
Yeah, which is totally different from logo which is used in Fairfax campus.
I'll answer that. So it's a question of the seal, and that's not a term. It's not a question of Korea. They also don't permit that. There are rules around that in the U.S. The seal is an official thing when you're taking creative liberties to put here, and that doesn't even in Fairfax they're not allowed.
So you can use the logo, but not the seal. The seal is like what tells you that the king gave permission for this.
Student was curious about it, so.
Yeah, thanks. Good. Okay. Third. Yes.
My last question is, do you think it's easy for GMUK students to get internships or jobs in US? So if not, what would be the solutions? And if you think so, what is this?
So one of the things that I will tell you first of all that I don't have a lot of experience knowing how GMUK students have done with internships. I will tell you though what I think my strategy would be. One of the questions that I've been mulling as thinking about this job is how might we make use of the very large Korean community in the Fairfax region where George Mason is located. And it seems to me like one real potential is to make connections in that community for internships. So that's one place I would start. Both, I would also want to go to some of the partners that we work with already and say, wouldn't you be interested in someone who has both great English language skills, but who have Asian operations, really understands the Asian context as well. Something else that someone brought up that seems worth thinking about, and this is on the Korea side, is what are the connections between some of the companies that we work with at Fairfax and their branches in Korea. Yes?
Hello, hi.
Hi.
I was really impressed with your presentations, and I was quite excited that there's a lot of research aspects was contained in it.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Misan Chung, and I am a student of Red Conflict Analysis and Resolution.
Okay.
I do also have two questions. One is actually more personal, but I think it will give us good idea about you. One is that what motivates you or what attracts you to come to this school particularly to
Yeah.
apply this job?
Yeah.
And then the second is that we have wonderful professors who devoted their whole time to establish this school as a supportive and academic field to students. However, sometimes we worry that we will run them out because they are fundamentally really lacking the facilities. And I think it's understandable that beginning like newly born schools, it's an inevitable problem for them to go through these kind of things with financial lag and support from outside. What is the creative way that, what is your vision
Yeah.
to solve this very difficult problem as a new school?
Can you maybe be a little more particular about the lack of resource? Where that comes
our
up?
professors are really working hard.
Right.
For us to first, a lot of internships,
Mhm.
provided
Mhm.
because of their work, and then also I know that they are working to set up research environments here,
Yes.
which normally the school provides, but because it's a new
Okay.
school.
Do you mean like
Yeah.
labs or?
Yeah, labs
Yeah.
or like libraries.
Library,
or like
right.
studying areas.
So how are the
Yeah.
So those kind of physical resources.
You see.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me talk first of all about why I'm interested in this position. Some of it is, as I was saying, I really like learning about other places, other cultures, and I have a certain sense of adventure, and so it's attractive for me to come here, and it's even more attractive now that I've been here. But also, I enjoyed being dean when I was in Fairfax, and so this is a great opportunity for me to pursue a dean position, but not to leave George Mason, which I also very much love. And I want Mason Free to succeed, and I think that I do bring some the kind of familiarity with Mason and some of the skill sets that we're looking for. So that's why I'm applying. In terms of the specific resources, particularly the library, I was just talking. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Andrew, right? Yeah, talking to Andrew about kind of confusion about what resources are expected from the IGC, what the right amount of staffing for the library is. So again, I would need to know more detail, but I think it's really important to there are two ways we get resources. One is to make sure that within our own budget that we are spending on things that give us value. So where are we spending that's not actually that useful? Let's try not to spend there and move the resources to where they count. The other is to say to George Mason Fairfax, you set us up, you want to set us up to succeed. And this is the kind of thing we need to succeed. Yes?
Hi, my name is Kyutat Lee. I'm teaching here.
Oh, you're from Cultural Studies?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
from Cultural Studies. Yes,
Yeah.
you know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm teaching some anthropology courses as
Great.
well as the popular music courses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering about the very structure of our university. We have 5 departments. It's like economics management, global affairs, conflict analysis and resolution, and computer game design.
Yes.
And we will have more. But I do not belong to any of the department. I actually am a part of a art and science, which is not really
Right.
department.
Right.
And actually, so for example, on my business class, I'm a department of anthropology, but I am not hired by George Mason University in Fairfax, but by here in Korea.
Yes.
Actually was a part of global affairs, but suddenly my status has been changing into something else. I don't exactly know, art and science.
Yes.
And there are 5 more professors related to this art and science area, but there is no department of arts and science, and there is not a kind of structure about the art and science. Really vague.
Yes.
And actually, many of our great faculty come from Fairfax, because art and science is the department or the very structure supposed to teach, not really major courses, but general electives, some other general courses. That also is necessary for students, right? But since I don't belong to this kind of very certain department,
Yes.
is art and science really big thing, my status is not really stable.
Right.
I do not know whether I am a part of certain department. So sometimes I feel that I am not really a part of this whole faculty body. Sometimes a bit, what should I say, alienated. I'm enjoying my freedom.
So, like, Les is just limited to anthropology.
Oh yeah.
You got all the arts and sciences under your.
So,
Yeah.
is that kind of plan for the future structure?
So that's a great question. And one of the things, just to back up, I mean, one of the, when you think about first priorities, and I think I may have already said this, but before you do anything, you've got to listen to people and find out where the issues are, what the questions are. And it's interesting that you bring up this question about arts and sciences, because I've noticed that that's a name here, and it has no correspondence to anything on the Fairfax campus. It's not even, there is no arts and sciences on the Fairfax campus. So I don't know how that emerged. I don't know what purpose it's serving. It might be serving some purpose that I don't know about, and that's important. So I wouldn't want to just say, you know, let's pull that name off the doors without, you know, trying to understand it. But I can see that if we're trying to create a good alignment between Fairfax and Mason Korea, why do we have units that don't correspond to one another? That seems like you're giving yourself a disadvantage from the start. Yes?
And since we started the process just from the facilities, it was a decision made 4 years ago, and we started to actually try and align with schools and colleges, because I too made that comment where we said, I was like, it's not actually something in Fairfax.
Right.
So we just established in our next year, we're going to be creating a chess area, and then we're trying to put all the rights. So even here, econ is to be its own, and that's not actually a school, it's actually
Right,
chess.
yeah.
So we slowly through facilities, but for that one, we inherited it from Houston, and everyone mostly there probably fits in some degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Under either COS or under chess. So at some point, it's something we could.
Right, and that, you know, if it's not, certainly if it's not serving any positive purpose, it's clearly negative in the sense that if you say we want to have people know who to talk to, but you don't have the same units, you're not going to get that. Yeah.
So it's really true.
Yes, Les.
Could you say some more about your vision of what an international college campus would be? You've mentioned it a couple of times. I'd like to know more about what you think that is and what it could be.
So, first of all, it's kind of, I mean, you have to start, well, they really have to happen at the same time, I think. But it needs, on the one hand, to provide its international audiences what it promises, that is a U.S.-style education, right? So we need to get those alignments, we need to get the transfer of faculty and staff, we need to make sure that we are delivering on that promise. But I also think then that one of the ways we do that, and also kind of exceed that goal, is to say what value are we not just bringing to people who come here, but what value are we bringing to Mason Fairfax? And that, first of all, the students, you know, we're helping their internationalization, but we also can be helping with lots of research programs, like you've done with SCAR and with SHAR. So that's my vision, is that it's one of mutual support and benefit, rather than just mirroring. That's what I was trying to get at. Does that answer your? Yeah.
No, that does. I forgot. I didn't want to raise one objection to my dear friend Professor Jim's comment that the best students leave, because you can see that some of the best students stay.
Right. Agree.
Well, yeah. I mean, So my table today, I don't know, are there people who were at that table? I'm trying to look back around. We're mainly second semester freshmen, but there were two, one was a GLOA major, and I forget the other major. Management. But they had seemed like they had a really good experience here, and they were going on to great futures. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Oh, we got 10 minutes. Okay, great. Yes.
Stand up. gap between Mason Korea and Mason Fairfax,
Mhm.
which I think, from a student perspective, that is one of the big problems that kind of we have been talking about for many, many years.
Yes.
To be quite frank, as a student, there does seem to be kind of a lack of, I guess, responsibility that Fairfax has taken sometimes. It seems, I'm not sure if this is the correct way to put it, I guess, but as a student.
How do you experience that lack of responsibility?
Well, I think it does stem from a lot of different, it's not just one thing, but it does stem from a lot of different things that I think students have mentioned today, such as classes, and sometimes.
Not a large enough offering of classes.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Classes and also professors and I guess just opportunities just in general or kind of a connection.
Right.
It's not just about the education as a whole. I think it's about the Mason identity as a whole. There is kind of a lack of kind of foundations for identity building, like Mason, like a patriot identity, like patriot pride. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, yeah, I mean, and so it's kind of multidimensional too, right? I mean, I think one of the things we definitely want to do is, just try to figure out what are the classes that are missing that are most often in demand, and work towards getting those offered. In terms of Mason faculty, again, I want to see more U.S. faculty coming over, and particularly. Long term, it's about introducing the idea earlier, but I think it's always going to be about shorter stays. So that is, and that may help with the class problem. In terms of spirit, I really want to see more cross communication between Mason Korea students and Mason US students, and more cross experiences. So, one of the things I was talking about earlier is if you've been George Mason, we don't have a football team, for which I personally am grateful. But some people would wish we did. But we have had a fantastic basketball team. And there's a lot of spirit around that basketball team, and especially around the Green Machine, which is our pep band. And so the cool thing is that those basketball games happen very often on Saturday nights at 7 o'clock, which would be Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Now I know that's maybe a little bit of a heavy lift, but wouldn't it be cool to have like breakfast and basketball, where we could share in some of that Mason spirit, have the game streaming, think about ways to align other Mason Fairfax events and Mason Korea events. We've got all these students who are majoring in Korean language, like having to communicate with you guys. So I think there's lots of possibilities for getting better connection between the two campuses.
Just to add to that, the Mason volleyball team will be coming to Korea.
Oh.
And so we're looking to do something, working with the athletic director. We're actually bringing possibly an NFL star to campus to give it the ribbon of the football team next spring, who plays for the Chicago Bears. And then we're also having 50 or so students next year from Mason Fairfax come here. And the purpose of having those students, and Mason Fairfax has taken responsibility to create a program that brings students here. And our hope is you don't stay in your cliques, but you actually get to meet those students, they bring the spirit. But it's really a question of how you take advantage of that. Because I met our students in Fairfax, and they're in Fairfax where there's all of the spirit, and their favorite part of there is shopping. That is nothing to do with the campus.
I think it's really good that we mentioned like Fairfax, because I think another concern is a lot of students that do end up going to Fairfax, when you see how they hang out with Mason Korean students because they have to stay, well, if they stay in the dorms, they stay with Mason Korea students in the global convex,
Yeah.
it's called. And they say, as a junior, when you go, it's very difficult to kind of integrate yourself into that community where people have already established relationships with prior to you coming into
We have a dissertation sitting in the Mason Library about the integration of international branch students from Mason, from one international branch campus to another. That's something certainly I would like to read and find out about. That is, again, I'm always interested also in what have people done before, what's the research, right? But I think we also need to talk to university life at Mason Fairfax and say, how could this, again, be a resource? Like, how could you do an event around meet your fellow Mason students from Korea? Use food, right? That always works for me. And Korean food is amazing. So, have a dinner for Mason Korea students and invite Mason Fairfax students so that they can meet one another. Maybe you guys know how to do something. I mean, certainly, like, again, if I were learning Korean, what a great opportunity would it be to have a native speaker my age who I could hang out with. So that's I'm sure, so that's an opportunity. So I think we can find lots of ways. Again, I always want to think about how are we an asset so that we can build those relationships, not only you need to do this for us, but you want to do this for us because it does something for you as well. Oh, time. So we're done with
Take
this.
one last question.
Oh, okay.
Anyone have a burning question?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lee, and I'm a sophomore student at the university.
Okay.
And I'm now working as the Voice, which is the open space and media in the
Yes. Yes.
And from last semester, as part of our project, we tried to make a collaboration between the Florida State, which is the media on the Jin campus. But
at the very first time to make a collaboration between two campuses, it's really hard, and because we really have limited situations regarding administration by starting from contacting with the other campus, because we have really limited source between two campuses collaboration. So you keep mentioning about the collaboration and the communication between two campuses.
Yeah.
So I would like to know whether you are going to do this kind of collaborations.
Yeah. So what were the impediments? What kept you from collaborating with the Fourth Estate?
We share some articles, so we gave them the articles, and they also gave us the articles. So we share.
So you do that?
Yes, we already did that.
But some of it you weren't able to do.
Yes.
What were the obstacles?
At the very first time, while we contacting to that Fourth Estate, it's really hard because we don't know whether we have to contact to
Okay,
and
so
whether we have to
who to talk to?
At the very last part, we finally just contacted the editor-in-chief directly and then do that kind of collaborations. But we think that we need some kind of more like official pass to make this collaboration with.
Right. So I do think one of the reasons I'm interested in this job and one of the qualifications or just kind of experience that I bring to it is that I know a lot of people at George Mason, and since communication and collaboration is an issue, I can try to leverage those relationships. Not in every instance, at every time, but especially where there's an obstacle, I would have a good idea who to call. And people, know who they're calling. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Is that okay?
Yes. Relate to her question. I think we especially from our culture, we don't jump to the higher position directly. But I'm wondering whether you are able to.
No, I mean, you know, on how will listen to me.
Or
once in a while.
how we can approach to you.
Oh, how you can approach me?
Is it going to be there will be certain like pathway we need to take?
Yeah,
or
I mean, in general, my bias is towards an open door. Part of the reason I like academic administration is I'm sort of an extrovert. I like working with people. You know, that doesn't, I mean, obviously my time, I assume I'll be doing lots of stuff, and I need to be careful, but my inclination is certainly to have direct communication. And certainly with students, one of the hallmarks of a small school is that you can have lots of interaction between between the leadership and between students and faculty and staff as well.